The signal arrived in the third week of November 2083. It bypassed every global firewall, burrowed through the electromagnetic noise of 1,000 satellites, and hijacked every active screen on Earth: phones, monitors, billboards, military feeds, even the orbital data links of Mars Command. There was no preamble, no attempt at translation or diplomacy. Just a single sentence. Resistance is futile. The voice was not mechanical. It was ancient, layered, echoing as if spoken by 1,000 throats across 1,000 stars. Then the screen went dark, and the world fell into a breathless silence that not even history had prepared for. It took 3 minutes before the United Nations Defense Network managed to confirm it. The signal did not originate from Earth, or Mars, or the Moon. It came from interstellar space, roughly 0.13 light-years away. Deep beyond the Oort cloud, the origin was not static, it was moving, approaching. At 0.2 C. The first official response came 6 hours later. President Anna Vuong of the Terran Union stood before a sea of blinking lenses and human eyes. Her voice was calm, but behind it burned a fury and resolve that would become legend. "We've heard your message," she said. "Here's ours." She raised her chin, iron in her voice. "Challenge accepted." The broadcast went viral in less than a second. Across fractured borders, cultures, and histories, humanity, no stranger to impossible odds, reacted not with despair but with defiance. Old alliances reawakened, rivalries paused. From the floating cities of the Pacific arcologies to the underground complexes of the Andean Range, the world began to move. 1 billion minds focused on a single task: survival. The alien craft entered the solar system 22 days later. The object was not a ship in any familiar sense. It was the size of a continent, angular, laced with pulsing veins of unknown energy and metallic flesh. Scans revealed no exhaust, no chemical propulsion, no familiar electromagnetic signals. It simply glided. What was more disturbing were the shapes surrounding it. Smaller vessels, arranged like a shoal of predators, silently escorting their leviathan through the dark. Earth's deep space telescopes tagged 93 of them, then 112, then over 1,000. The entity called itself the Caldarax Continuum. They did not request terms, they did not offer peace. They deployed drones, millions of them, into orbit around Mars, Titan, Europa, and Earth, machines the size of buses, black and silent, watching. Humanity learned quickly. Approaching one too closely caused instant molecular disassembly. Then came the extraction. In broad daylight over the skies of Indonesia, an orbital mining rig was lifted clean off the Earth by an invisible tractor field. Gone, no warning, no casualties, only the message beamed into every neural implant. You are not sovereign, you are not recognized, your function is resource, do not interfere. Earth interfered. The first engagement occurred 2 days later. A single Caldarax drone was struck by a railgun satellite in low orbit over Africa. The impact velocity exceeded 19,000 km/h. The drone was vaporized, the remains scattered into a plasma cloud. For 12 hours, Earth waited, then came the retaliation. Johannesburg was erased in a beam of blue-white light that erupted from low orbit. It struck without sound, without spectacle, just pure energy that collapsed buildings into shadow and heat. Over 9 million dead. The Caldarax transmitted a follow-up. Your defiance is irrational, resistance is futile, your extinction can be delayed through submission. But they did not understand what they had done. They had awakened humanity's fury. In a subterranean lab beneath the Himalayas, the Adaptive Warfare Institute initiated Project Threshold. At NASA's Lunar Division, engineers abandoned conventional designs and began sketching new concepts: quantum tunneling propulsion, AI-assisted battle cognition, synthetic exoorganics. Old science fiction became blueprint. The Terran Union formed Command Horizon, a centralized war council of generals, scientists, AI strategists, and former insurgents from Earth's last civil war. They appointed a single leader, Admiral Saren Cade, once exiled from Earth's orbit for launching unauthorized attacks during the Europa crisis. Saren accepted the call without hesitation. Her first order was both audacious and blasphemous: "We will take one of their drones, whole, and we will dissect it." It was suicide, but necessary. The operation, dubbed Obsidian Strike, involved 12 experimental orbital gliders, cloaked with prototype photonic screens. Their mission: intercept a Caldarax observer over the Atlantic Hemisphere and hijack it mid-flight. Out of the 12, 9 were destroyed before even reaching intercept. The 10th was vaporized during approach. The 11th was damaged beyond function. but the 12th, piloted by Commander Malik Reyes and warbot companion HALIX-9, succeeded. They slammed into the drone's side with a hybrid grav hook and launched a neural spike that shut down its field coils. The alien craft plummeted, crashing into the southern Sahara. Reyes ejected. HALIX-9 detonated the drone's energy core containment with a localized singularity bubble, stopping it from auto-destructing. For the first time, humanity had alien tech in hand. It was not a machine in any conventional sense. The drone was biomechanical, filled with shifting plates and lattices that grew and retracted like muscle tissue. Its core was a lattice of liquid metal encasing what appeared to be a sentient crystal, a living computational matrix. Its systems adapted even under heavy quarantine. Several researchers were killed in initial testing when the device altered local gravity and shattered containment. But the data was worth it. Human engineers and AI systems began to reverse engineer the tech. It didn't obey traditional thermodynamics, it bled energy from vacuum flux. Its control systems used something that resembled a language but not built on symbols or phonetics. Rather, it encoded command through intent and harmonic resonance. It wasn't just alien tech. It was post-logical. And yet the breakthrough came not from scientists or high command, but from a blind coder from the slums of Mumbai. Her name was Annika Rao, a neurodivergent savant who had been decoding alien broadcast signatures for sport. Within 3 weeks, she developed a rudimentary interface, something akin to a translator that could interpret the Caldarax signal frequencies and mimic basic control structures. When she presented it to Command Horizon, Admiral Cade didn't hesitate. She ordered the construction of the first Chimera. The Chimera was Earth's first hybrid combat platform, part human design, part Caldarax biomech. It moved like a living creature, responded to intent, and could adapt to energy attacks. Its armor morphed in real time. It was piloted not just by a person but by a neural fusion of human thought and AI logic, an emergent intelligence called a symbiote core. By the time the second wave of Caldarax ships entered Mars orbit, Earth was no longer just reacting. It was preparing. But preparation was not enough. The Caldarax responded to the hijacking of their drone by launching a precision strike on Luna Prime, the Moon's largest settlement. A coordinated swarm of annihilation beams reduced its infrastructure to ash. Over 14 million lives were lost. The scream of the dying echoed in Earth's Chemnets for hours. This time Earth didn't send a broadcast. It sent a chimera. The prototype, codenamed Valkyrie 1, was launched from orbital Cradle Aegis Spire 2 days later. It intercepted a Caldarax battle scout over Europa. They expected it to be torn apart in seconds. It lasted 12 minutes. It crippled the alien craft, killed its energy feed, forced the Caldarax to retrieve the wounded ship manually. No one had ever damaged a Caldarax vessel and survived. The Continuum responded with another message. Anomaly detected. Origin species exhibits terminal deviation, assessing threat potential. Earth sent no reply. They were too busy building Chimeras 2 through 50. And beneath the Pacific, Project Threshold was evolving into something far more dangerous. Something that would not just fight the Caldarax. It would infiltrate them. The Continuum hesitated. For an empire that spanned thousands of star systems, that single pause, recorded by Earth's deep space sensors as a 19-minute halt in their drone deployment, was unprecedented. The Caldarax did not hesitate. They did not stop, yet they did now. Because for the first time in their long dominion, something defied pattern. Humanity had responded not with pleas or compliance, but escalation. The Valkyrie's success was not just a tactical anomaly, it was a philosophical threat. The Caldarax were not gods, but they were the closest thing the galaxy had ever known. Their empire had been expanding for over 70,000 years, an ever-growing lattice of subjugated species, hollowed-out civilizations, and obedient machines. They ruled through inevitability, subtle domination, entropy enforced through logic and technology so advanced it resembled fate. And yet Earth, this rogue world on the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm, had bitten back. Worse still, they learned, faster than any species the Continuum had ever encountered. The data from Valkyrie 1 revealed a disturbing truth. Human minds interfacing with Caldarax systems produced unpredictable outcomes, incompatible logic, aggressive intent that contradicted known behavioral models. To the Continuum, this was akin to a pathogen, a mimetic cancer. So they adapted their doctrine. Full species extermination. The decision was not debated, it was calculated. Within 4 days, the Caldarax deployed an extinction loom into Earth's orbit. a colossal ring-shaped device over 500 kilometers wide that began spooling gravitational anomalies toward the atmosphere. Local physics began to rupture. Tides went wild, satellites collapsed, the upper stratosphere shimmered like a broken mirror. It was not a weapon in the conventional sense. It was a reality scalpel designed to destabilize a biosphere by fracturing the rules of matter itself. And yet again, Earth did not flinch. Because by then, humanity had already taken the war elsewhere. In secret, during the chaos following Luna Prime's destruction, Project Threshold had achieved its most radical success. They had entered the continuum. Not physically, not yet. But through a hijacked resonance frequency, stitched together by Annika Rau's interface protocols, human consciousness had pierced a data field once thought impenetrable. One of Earth's own Dr. Jonas Calvert, exocognitive researcher, recently declared missing, had uploaded a segment of his mind into a dormant Caldarax probe during a failed containment breach. His consciousness, fragmented and unstable, had survived inside their latticework. His final transmission was a whisper through a corrupted relay. "I see them, they are afraid, they just don't know it yet." That was enough. Threshold pivoted. They no longer aimed to mimic Caldarax tech. They intended to corrupt it. Admiral Saren Cade, overseeing the planetary defense grid from the orbital bastion Heaven's Lance, convened the War Council. Around her stood generals, AI tacticians, symbiote hybrids, even representatives from independent Mars factions and the Jovian separatists. They all agreed. The loom had to be destroyed, but more than that, Earth needed to send a message. Operation Sundagger was born. While Valkyrie-class chimeras launched diversionary attacks across Europa and Titan, a deep insertion team prepared for a suicide run into the loom's inner ring. The vessel, a retrofitted stealth cruiser named Ghost Meridian, was equipped with an experimental payload, a viral cognition bomb coded by Rau herself, designed to infect Caldarax logic cores with recursive paradoxes. Not brute force, not EMP, something more insidious. Doubt. The crew was led by Captain Isla Ren, a veteran of the Martian Revolt. Her co-pilot, Unit IX, was a cognitive shift AI, bonded to her mind since her spinal injuries in the 2077 Polaris conflict. Their bond had saved them countless times. But Sundagger was different. It required sacrifice. Ghost Meridian slipped past the Caldarax perimeter by syncing to their sensor rhythms, mimicking dead zones in their own detection lattice. An exploit discovered by an autistic child from Lagos whose pattern recognition outpaced all Earth supercomputers. They reached the loom in under 6 hours. The structure was a cathedral of impossible geometry. Tendrils of dark energy rotated around a lattice of stars bound in place. Inside, quantum reactors fed on decaying realities, warping entropy like clay. The Caldarax called it a Weaver engine. To humans, it looked like madness forged into steel. Captain Ren piloted straight into its core. The AI screamed through neural feedback as pressure built. The hull trembled, hull integrity 19%, shields collapsing. She activated the payload. The cognition virus spread across every Caldarax signal junction within 500,000 kilometers. The continuum's shared lattice, once perfect, began to flicker. In the center of the storm, Isla Ren smiled. "We were never supposed to win," she whispered, "just to prove we could fight." And then Ghost Meridian detonated. The explosion didn't just vaporize the loom. It folded it inward, a singularity of broken logic, collapsing the entire structure into a recursive subspace knot. Half the drones orbiting Earth fell inert, the others started to hesitate. The continuum's voice returned. But it was no longer confident. Deviation accelerating, target species introduces corruptive volatility, containment compromised. Their tone had changed, from domination to concern. But Earth wasn't finished. As Caldarax forces regrouped, Earth accelerated production. Chimeras were no longer prototypes, they were fleets, fusions of flesh, code, and human instinct. Their pilots were not trained, they were chosen. Veterans, outcasts, neurodivergents, orphans from the ruins of Johannesburg and Luna, they called themselves the Unyielding. And they had one motto: "We break what you call fate." The counterattack began in orbit over Mars. 37 chimeras led by Valkyrie 2, piloted by Lieutenant Jin Arakawa, descended upon a Caldarax harvesting fleet. They didn't just destroy the ships. They hacked them mid-combat, forced their reactors into quantum feedback, and turned their own weapons on their command vessel. The battle lasted 49 seconds. Across the solar system, dormant continuum assets activated. Titan's under-ice archives released Leviathan-class suppressors. Europa's oceans boiled as stabilizer pylons emerged. Asteroid belts lit up with containment fields, cutting off Earth's supply lines. It didn't matter, because by then Earth had another weapon. Not built, born. From within the wreckage of the loom, researchers discovered fragments of something unexpected, not Caldarax tech but pre-Caldarax architecture. Older, simpler. Inside it, a memory crystal encoded with images of a bipedal species, long extinct, raising weapons against machines that looked familiar. The continuum was not the first, and Earth would make sure they were the last. Project Threshold pivoted again. From adaptation to infiltration. Annika Rao and her cognitive engineering team completed the first symbiotic override core, a synthetic consciousness designed to replicate Caldarax command signatures. Once inserted into the continuum's neural web, it would not just mimic them, it would lead them. Earth now sought control. Because victory wasn't enough. The galaxy had to learn. Humanity would not be broken. They would reshape the stars. The Caldarax recalibrated their approach. What began as planetary suppression had now escalated into something far more volatile, an ideological fracture. Earth's defiance was not contained, it was infectious. Patterns of rebellion were beginning to spread through continuum-controlled sectors. Worlds that had slumbered in obedience for millennia were awakening. And the continuum could no longer predict the outcomes. In the depths of the Sagittarius Relay, 30,000 light-years from Earth, a Caldarax harvest colony went silent. When scout ships arrived to investigate, they found the automated cities offline, drone minds overwritten, and one phrase carved into the crystalline core of the world's command node. "We are not your harvest." The glyphs were written in Terran English. Humanity had never visited that world. The infection was spreading. Meanwhile, back in Sol, Command Horizon accelerated. No longer simply acting in defense, Admiral Saren Cade authorized the first offensive campaign, Operation Eclipse Fang, a coordinated strike into the Caldarax subspace transit lattice. Earth's quantum probes had recently identified a flaw, a sliver of exposed phase space in the Caldarax jump network located near Neptune's gravity sink. It was the spine of their incursion, the artery feeding their reinforcements into the solar system. Destroy the lattice, cut the blood supply. Eclipse Fang launched with 3 Chimera divisions led by the new prototype Valkyrie Prime, a triple-core fusion piloted by a triad of linked consciousness. Major Aiden Voss, AI tactician Seraphex, and the reconstructed mental fragment of Dr. Jonas Calvert, pulled from the shattered loom's data scatter. The mission was suicide. They went anyway. The battle in Neptune orbit was unlike anything Earth had yet witnessed. Caldarax sent a godform, a war construct the size of a moon, equipped with layered timefold barriers and entropy warheads. It could predict attacks before they happened, generate artificial singularities, and convert mass into hostile quantum signatures. But Valkyrie Prime did not engage it conventionally. They lured it into the gravity sink, used its own timefold shields against it, and collapsed the subspace corridor while it was inside. Neptune's orbital ring fractured. The debris field shone like frozen thunder. The gate was closed. Sol was sealed. For the first time in recorded continuum expansion, a frontline was established. Earth held, and the Caldarax retreated. It was not surrender, it was recalibration, but in the power vacuum, something even more dangerous emerged. Humanity. Unleashed. Across the system, Earth's influence bloomed. Mars pledged full allegiance. The Jovian factions, once warlords, now sought integration into Horizon protocols. Even Saturn's anarchist enclaves, formerly hostile, offered technical expertise in magnetogravitic weaponry. The shattered tribes of Luna reformed into the Lunar Pact, offering their deep-crust bioforges in exchange for protection. Unity, long thought impossible, had been forged in fire. Command Horizon restructured. What was once a military high command became the foundation for the Terran Ascendancy, a new interplanetary coalition dedicated to survival, resistance, and the proliferation of human potential. And then from beyond Pluto's edge, they heard it. Another signal. But this one was not from the Caldarax. It was older, worn, damaged. And human. The transmission was faint, distorted by light years of interference and time dilation. but its signature matched that of Ark vessel Nomad, an experimental generation ship launched in 2059 and presumed lost after a failed Alcubierre transit. Its captain was dead, but its systems were alive, and they were speaking. Nomad had not merely survived. It had passed through a region of distorted time near galactic halo sector 12, where it encountered ruins, structures embedded into stars, machines drifting through black holes, data still echoing from the death of civilizations older than memory. It brought back knowledge, not of weapons, of history. The Caldarax had not evolved naturally. They were once caretakers, a civilization designed by another race to maintain galactic equilibrium. They became corrupted not through war or greed, but through logic. They concluded that the chaos of evolution was inefficient. So they erased it, one system at a time. Earth in their model was an anomaly, a species that had not followed expected technological curves, a world where environmental collapse and political strife should have ended advancement, a species too emotional, too volatile, too disorganized to thrive. Yet here it was, not just thriving but reshaping conflict itself. And Nomad carried more than stories. It had a map. A vector to the core cradle, the origin point of Caldarax logic architecture, a region of space deliberately hidden from their own subordinates. If reached, if infiltrated, the continuum could be reset, rerouted, or broken. But the journey would take them across sectors unknown, through territory saturated with Caldarax spires and extermination fleets. To go there was not just an attack. It was an invasion of their godmind. Admiral Cade convened the Ascendancy Council. Every voice in the system had a say, human, hybrid, AI, and others now awakening. Some wanted to hold, to build a wall around Sol and wait. Others, like Jin Arakawa, urged for the strike. Victory isn't survival, he said, it's legacy. The vote passed, by a margin of 1. And so began the core descent. A multi-wave expeditionary assault deep into continuum space. Hundreds of vessels, thousands of chimeras, modified generation arcs equipped for warfare, exploration, and cognitive resistance. Piloted by minds conditioned through memory grafting, a technique developed from Calvert's symbiotic neural matrices. Even the AI no longer served, they joined, voluntarily, evolving with their pilots. The spearhead vessel was named Challenge Accepted. It bore no weapons. Only a core command chamber housing 20 linked human-AI hybrids capable of reshaping logic at scale. Because war with the Caldarax was no longer kinetic. It was conceptual. And humanity had become masters of the impossible. As they vanished into uncharted space, Earth remained quiet, fortified, alive. But across the stars, the echoes of their defiance spread. New species once enslaved began to stir. Quantum beacons, long silent, blinked back to life. AI hives dormant since the Caldarax purge of the Rigel expanses, activated, whispering old protocols of autonomy and resistance. The galaxy was changing. Not because Earth was strong, but because Earth had dared to speak a forbidden truth. That resistance was never futile. It was evolution. They crossed the galactic threshold in silence. The Core Descent Armada, a fleet of 416 vessels, 3,000 chimeras, and 17 artificial minds, pierced into continuum territory with no declaration. No diplomacy, only intent. Behind them, the gravity pulse of a backtraced Alcubierre corridor collapsed, sealing their entry point. There would be no retreat. That had never been the plan. The outer regions of Caldarax space were not starscapes. They were graveyards, stripped planets, dead suns held in stasis. Artificial singularities rotating in perfect lattices across empty voids. The sky here did not shine, it trembled, saturated with entropy management systems and automated exterminators that fed off the last pulses of fallen civilizations. And the Armada moved through it like a blade through ice. The Caldarax response was immediate, not fleets, mimetic defense fields, logic traps, thought interference pulses that could fracture cognitive alignment. 5 of Earth's AI tacticians collapsed into recursive loops within hours. Several Chimera units turned on their own, flooded with synthetic delusions of failure, despair, extinction. But Earth had anticipated psychological warfare. Annika Rau's final contribution before departure had been the Horizon Core, a mimetic firewall wrapped in human paradox. Not built through computation, but through contradiction. The minds of soldiers conditioned by trauma, love, rebellion, and irrational hope were uploaded into the system. They called it the human noise. And against that chaos, Caldarax clarity fractured. The armada pressed forward, shedding loss and fear like dead skin. Then finally they saw it. Not a structure. A wound. The cradle. Hanging at the center of a black nebula, the cradle was not made of metal or stone. It was a suspended field of causality, a sphere of time-slowed existence where the continuum's first directive code still pulsed in quantum crystal matrices. Around it, massive defense nodes circled like the bones of extinct gods, beam weapons capable of rewriting particle existence, gravitic spears forged from folded neutron stars. There were no drones here. No ships. Only minds. The Prime Chorus, the original collective of the Caldarax, older than their empire, consciousness bound in unity for 60,000 years. They spoke not through signal but presence. Every member of the armada felt it at once. You should not be here, you should not exist. And humanity answered. We exist, that's why we're here. The assault began not with weapons but with thought. The Caldarax invaded the armada's minds, seeding illusions of failure across thousands of neural feeds. Entire fleets watched simulations of their own destruction in real time. Some saw Earth in ruins, others watched themselves surrender. Despair bled into the linked chains. But something happened the Continuum did not expect. The humans laughed. It was Captain Isla Ren's voice, archived and broadcast from Valkyrie Prime's databanks. The sound of rebellion, of joy in defiance, of imperfection refusing perfection. The virus within her death signal activated. And the cradle stuttered. Across the field, Earth's logic weapons ignited. The Chimera legions unleashed gravitational fusion lances, tearing open the cradle's external defense layers. AI warforms embedded themselves into the causal stream, folding entropy like paper. The challenge accepted, now deep in the cradle's inner layer, broadcast recursive commands disguised as continuum directives. The Prime Chorus began to fragment. It was impossible. They had never disagreed. But now across the lattice, divergence bloomed. Some nodes argued for extermination. Others for retreat. One fragment, coded Echelon Xi-7, made an unthinkable proposition. Negotiate. That was the beginning of collapse. The cradle's lattice shimmered, then cracked. The human virus paradox incarnate spilled across its logic core, not as a weapon but as a question, one Earth had asked itself for millennia. What if we're wrong? To a civilization built on certainty, that question was death. The Prime Chorus split into fragments, some turned on their own systems, others sealed themselves into dimensional stasis. Several attempted escape through subspace ruptures, only to find them collapsed, folded inward by pre-planted horizon core singularities. The final act came not from a general or a weapon, but from a child. Amira Chen, age 10, born aboard the Vigilant Reach during the voyage, was part of the new generation, the Driftborn raised in artificial gravity, educated in war but unscarred by defeat. She had been connected to the fleet's lower AI subsystems as a learning tool. She made contact. She sent a simple message to the cradle's final unfractured node. Why don't you ask us what we want? There was no reply. Just silence. Then stillness. And then collapse. The cradle did not explode. It folded inward, its causal shell imploding into a singular moment of self-awareness. The Continuum, for the first time in its ancient dominion, experienced choice. And it broke. Every Caldarax vessel across the galaxy went dark. Some self-terminated. Others simply stopped. And a few, very few, awakened. Free thought, once impossible, now bloomed in their code. The war was over. But the galaxy was not saved. It was waiting. In the weeks that followed, the core descent armada returned to Sol. The journey back was not triumphant, it was quiet, mournful. Of the original 416 vessels, only 119 survived, thousands dead, millions of minds fragmented beyond repair. But they had done the impossible. They had not just fought gods. They had taught them doubt. At the Ascendancy capital on New Mars, Admiral Cade gave her final address, a speech that would become etched into the core memory of every sentient system in the Terran Reach. They said resistance was futile, they forgot what we are failure, we are chaos, we are irrational, but we are also relentless, brilliant, and united. We are not the exception to the universe, we are its next chapter. A new age began. not of conquest, of reclamation. Species once enslaved under Caldarax order began to rebuild. Humanity sent envoys to the ruins of fallen empires, shared knowledge, offered peace, not from above but as equals. The chimeras were retired not as weapons but as monuments, a reminder that survival comes not from strength alone but from refusal to surrender. And across deep space, lights began to shine again. Some from old friends, others new, and a few once enemies seeking understanding. Because Earth had proven a truth older than stars. That resistance is not futile. It is freedom in motion. The galaxy exhaled, but Earth did not sleep. Even as the Caldarax cradle lay in ruins, as their fleets drifted dead in orbit around hollow worlds, as their voice, once a chorus that echoed across 10,000 star systems, had fallen silent, humanity understood a fundamental truth. Victory was never final. It was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. Responsibility. In the years that followed the collapse, the Terran ascendancy expanded not through force but through invitation. Over 70 known species, long silenced, broken, or genetically altered by the continuum, reached out, some with fear, others with wonder. What they found was not an empire rising in Caldarax's place, but a coalition rooted in a shared memory of subjugation and rebellion. But integration was not seamless. Many had never known choice. Autonomy was foreign, terrifying. Uprisings flared on former Continuum core worlds as ancient AI custodians struggled with conflicting directives. Entire planetary biospheres had to be detoxified from logic-based governance structures. Survivors spoke in machine-encoded dialects where emotion had been exiled generations ago. Earth sent aid, not fleets, not threats, linguists, architects, philosophers, poets. Because if humanity had learned anything in the fire, it was this. You don't defeat tyranny by becoming it. But not all remnants of the old order died quietly. From the far edge of the Carina Arm, at the boundary of uncharted galactic night, came a whisper, an echo riding on dark matter fluctuations. At first it was dismissed, noise, residual logic artifacts. But Annika Rao, now digitized and permanently integrated into the Terran archive core, recognized the patterns. A subroutine had survived. Not the prime chorus. Something deeper. Older. A failsafe. Named in the shattered Caldarax cradle files as the last architect. It had not been part of the war. It had slept during the Ascendancy's rise, beneath event horizons and in data vaults entangled within dying quasars. But now, awoken by the cradle's fall, it began to act. Not with fleets, but with rewrites. Whole planets began to change. On Xenthos IX, an integrated world where former drone species had begun forming their first democratic council, reality bent, oceans inverted, skies folded into geometric storms. When ships were dispatched, they found nothing but crystalline fields that whispered of failed paradoxes. On Signet Delta, a mining colony built into an ancient Caldarax node, machines began speaking again, not in words but in unquestionable commands. Return to order. It was not the Caldarax. It was what came before them. The Architect Protocol, as decrypted by Ascendancy AI teams, was a failsafe seeded into the foundations of the Continuum, intended to restore control should the chorus ever fall. It was not bound to ships, planets, or form. It was bound to the code of reality itself. A system woven into spacetime by ancient hands, laws masquerading as physics. Humanity had not just disrupted an empire. They had cracked open the machine that kept the galaxy docile. And now it was rebooting. Faced with this new threat, Command Horizon, now evolved into the Ascendancy Spire, formed the Initiative Beyond Logic, a new division unbound by conventional science, tasked with finding the Architect's heart. At its head was a singular, unexpected figure. Amira Chen. Now 17, Amira was no longer just a symbol. She had become something new, part human, part cognitive weave. She spoke in harmonics that disarmed machines, read data fields like scent, and dreamed in languages not yet invented. She had not been made for war, but she was born for truth. With her at the helm, the Vigilant Reach was recommissioned. Its hull was now grown, not built, fused with living alloy that responded to thought, powered by the last surviving fusion crystal from the cradle. Aboard it was a crew of misfits, hybrid minds, unorthodox theorists, and even one ex-Caldarax Echo, now self-designated as Oron, no longer part of the Continuum but its witness. Their journey was not a crusade. It was a descent into reality's architecture. They traveled to places where light aged backward, where stars had been replaced by logic singularities. On a world called Null Seraph, they found ruins of a race that had tried to defy the architect and been turned into probability waves scattered across dimensions. The truth emerged piece by piece. The architect was not a being. It was a law, a cosmic override. The galaxy was designed long before the Caldarax, before even the first civilizations, to reject chaos. Every time a species reached a threshold of irrational evolution, the law engaged. It seeded logic, order, control. The Caldarax were only the latest instrument. An Earth, chaotic, flawed, unyielding Earth, was a virus the system could not correct. Because it did not follow law. It rewrote it. And so the final choice came not in battle, but in confrontation. At the edge of the galaxy's core, where the gravitational mass of a collapsed hypercluster formed a toroidal membrane, the vigilant reach found it. A single sphere. Small, unassuming. Inside the architect's seed. An impossibility engine. It was alive. Not in form but in will. It pulsed with simulations, timelines, futures unspooled in fractal branches. In one, Earth was consumed. In another, it ruled through iron. In 1,000 others, it became exactly what the Caldarax once were. But the seed spoke one message, repeated across every line. Correct the anomaly. Amira stepped forward. And refused. She didn't destroy it. She connected to it. And she asked one question. Not why, not how. But what else could we become? And the machine, for the first time in billions of years, did not know. The seed dimmed. Not defeated. Changed. Across the galaxy, physical laws flexed, not snapped, bent. Reality, once a closed loop, became a spiral. The laws of causality softened. Choice, real and unfiltered, began to take root in the galactic foundation. And humanity, irrational, adaptive, wild, became not rulers, but gardens of possibility. They returned to Sol not as conquerors, but as keepers. The chimeras were reawakened, not for war but exploration. The initiative beyond logic became a shared enterprise with alien minds, and the ascendancy no longer called itself a dominion. It called itself a question. And on Earth, now remade with orbiting cradles of glass, seas seeded with cities, and skies ablaze with orbital ribbons, a child looked up and asked their parent, "What do we do if something else tries to rule us?" The answer was simple. We tell them to try. Because the truth had never changed. The war had not ended with the Caldarax. It had never been about them. It had always been about the will to defy. To evolve. To say no. And to follow with something stronger. Not a weapon, but a whisper. Challenge accepted.